Well, good morning. It's 11 o'clock on Sunday. I've just got back from church, so let's get on to these questions, if there are questions. A question. Which is quicker, smoke signals or a baud rate of 2? No parity, 1 stop bit. It would depend. I would argue there's less infrastructure required for smoke signals, but that misinformation is much more likely. If you wanted a concise signal with precise information presented, which was unambiguous, I think I'd stick to the baud rate. What's the worst job you've ever done for money? Sticking my hands into chickens' bums and pulling their entrails out. What does the Battlezone eyeball tier ending mean? Well, Battlezone was, that's the board to bits, it's one of the first computer games. The eyeball, well, that's HAL. I've put the eyeball inside. It's watching you, watching me, perhaps. And HAL, I think, is, 2001's a great story, and you've got an artificial intelligence there that would pass the Turing test, but it's being given conflicting information. It's suffering cognitive dissonance, and how would it deal with that? And so it's a very interesting, if you just watch 2000 or read preferably 2001 just from the perspective of HAL, I think it's quite an interesting ethical, moral dilemma that HAL goes through. And the tier, well, that is because, the rubbish promoted by creationists, the distortions of science and logic that creationists present on YouTube would have HAL crying in my mind. Do you want ideas, suggestions for new videos? Well, they're always welcome. I always have many ideas going through my head, and I always have several. I have a folder on my PC with probably 24 subfolders of different headings where I put bits in, because these things, if you have an idea, your first idea is not always the best one. You have an idea for a video, but let it wander around in your subconscious for a bit until it gels into something that you can produce a video from. And I get my ideas from comments, and I get my ideas from watching other videos as well as just my general reading. So I would never say no to somebody saying go for it. Tell me what you want to see. Why do you think that having 3,000 subscribers should have any bearing on the amount of care you give to ensuring that things you say are accurate and or supported by references? No, it doesn't. It's just humbling. If you imagine the first video you make on YouTube, you have no subscribers, or potentially 0 subscribers, and you decide to put a video up. And so yes, you do take care and you check your reference and all the rest of it. But I wouldn't be human if I wasn't aware of the fact that potentially, the next video I put up, 3,000 people were going to go click and watch it. It has a focus and effect on the mind. It doesn't make you want to be more accurate or anything. It just makes you more aware. Probably an example, if you were chatting to your mates down the pub about something, you were then called in to do a live piece to camera on the 6 o'clock news, it would have an effect on you, I would think. Can I prove Fermat's last theorem? No, Truth Surge, go away. Were you born into an atheist or believing family? If then, relate your story. No, neither. Church of England, in England, it's not pushed at all. And so I did Sunday school. I learnt the baby Jesus stories, Noah's Ark and such like. But I would guess I probably stopped going about the age of 9. And it went the same way as Santa or Father Christmas as it was in those days. I've been wondering what your educational and work subject field is. Your videos seem to be quite diverse, and there are many answers that I'd believe if you said them. Oh right, this is where the previous comment came from. Well, the simple answer to this is that I don't have a formal education. I never went to university. I don't have a PhD. I have done lots of courses since. I've probably spent a good 2-3 years in education since school, primarily in technical fields, electronics, radio, radar and computing. And so I've learned how to learn, which I think is an important thing. It's a skill to actually drill down and find original sources and such like, and try and cross-reference to hopefully present a broad view of whatever topic you're discussing, which is difficult in 10-minute videos. I do try and create 10-minute videos, but I do try and cover the topic broadly. I have an interest in history, and I have an interest in science and technology. and I read the subjects. But yes, I haven't studied them formally, and I have the most immense respect for people who have those little letters after their names, because I do appreciate the perseverance that it takes to achieve that level of academic recognition. And I should make it clear here that when I'm doing the videos, I'm really collating other people's work. It's not my work, which is why I reference and which is why I cite people. What I've done is hopefully understood enough of the papers, the wonderful work that other people have done, and been able to bring it to you so that you have something if you're debating with a creationist, or if you just want to learn more about a subject, you have an idea of where to go and find the nitty-gritty detail. That is what I'm doing, I hope. What was it that inspired you to make YouTube videos? It was a comment. I was commenting on other people's videos, and I was challenging creationists. And someone said, "Oh, well, you're a troll because all you do is, you've got no videos, etc." And I thought, well, that is a fair comment, isn't it? And I thought, well, make a video, and then they can't say I'm a troll because I can say, look, there's the video. Can you please comment on the phrase you always end with, without this feeling we are only robots? Do I say feeling or emotion? Is it Elizabeth Gilbert? Yes, it is. And a lot of creationists, they actually almost come across as sociopaths to me. They have no interest. They don't appear to have empathy with the rest of the human world. Their only interest is to get across their message. And you then wonder what their motive is. Is their motive money? Because certainly none of them are following the teachings of Jesus as I understand it. What's it like having 3,000 subscribers? It's humbling, Mr. Graycoat. It's very humbling. It is immensely humbling that with the many, many hours of video that are uploaded to YouTube every day, that a number of people will choose to watch mine. And I suppose that goes back to the earlier question on, does it make you take more care over your videos? Well, it does make you want to thank the people who watch you by trying your best to create the best videos you can. I think that's the answer. That's what probably the difference of having 3,000 subscribers. If you had 3 million subscribers, then you would want to have the very slickest presentation. I hope that answers that one. Why is there still gravity on the Enterprise in Star Trek Into Darkness while the ship is falling towards Earth with absolutely nothing slowing it down? That's because in science fiction they have to break quite a lot of the rules of physics. An interesting aside, of course, is that on the ISS you'll hear people talking about weightlessness. And of course that's completely wrong, because I think the figure's about right. On the ISS, gravity is about 90% of what it is on Earth. So that if you were a 100-kilo man on Earth, you would weigh 90 kilos on the ISS. The reason you appear weightless is because you're in free fall. The ISS is in permanent free fall around the Earth, so you weigh exactly the same. My question is, when the hell are my Ken Ham biblical glasses going to arrive? I think I've already told you, Northern Dog Star, you didn't pray over your check. When the checks come to me, I ask God whether they've been prayed over or not. The ones that are prayed over go straight to God, and he dispatches your Ken Ham biblical glasses. If you cannot be bothered to pray over them, then they go into my offshore account. Okay? I don't want to hear from you again. If belief in the Abrahamic gods finally disappears, as it should, would a new god take its place, or would we finally have logic and reason fill that particular irrational human need? No, I think, there are atheists who believe in psychic abilities and homeopathy and such like. The ability for humans to rationalize the absurd, I don't think is dependent on the Abrahamic gods disappearing. So no, I think belief will always be with us, I'm afraid. Well, I'd like it to go away, knock on wood. What's the difference between empty space and non-existent space? I think you've answered your question. Non-existent space isn't there. It's a difficult concept, because when we think of the universe, we think of the universe as being in space, when it's not. Our understanding is that the universe is space, as in there's nothing outside it, which is very hard for us to grasp. If you go back to the Big Bang, or the something like 10 to the minus 43 seconds or something after the singularity, then at that time and space were and the 3 dimensions we have were non-existent as dimensions, and time separated from space, and space began to expand, and space has been expanding ever since. It's still expanding, as my understanding. I have a question, but it might sound a little bit fuzzy. That's all right, so will my answer. I've seen you are making a lot of videos about very different topics of science. I'm thinking about the 6 Impossible Things series or the new video about dinosaur extinction. How, in which sources and how long do you research for those topics, and when do you think you're finished and the video will become good enough? Obviously, I pick topics I'm interested in, and what I normally do is scribble down some ideas and put them away, and I'll think on them for a while, because I can't simply start writing and write down 3 or 4 sheets of paper, because there'll be so much I forget. I also have to try and strip away my preconceptions on anything. Obviously, I know what I know, and that affects the way I research things, but I don't want to put all my preconceptions on paper. I want to sort of go back to the source. Once I've collected all my information together, I'll sort of record it, record the vocals, and I can end up with over an hour of vocals, which is no good when I'm trying to produce a 10-minute video. So I then have to trim that down, and it can be painful to chunk out bits that you think are important, which is why I have the vocals and the visuals, because it gives me I get twice as much information into 10 minutes as I would with just the vocals. And actually that'd be interesting, because I'd like to know whether people appreciate that, because I know you can't read and listen to me at the same time, and it does force you to go back over the video. My idea is it just takes 10 minutes out of your day. Then if you have the interest, you can go back and pause and read the frames as you go through. So how long? Well, the dinosaurs one, I think I never tot it up, but I think probably an idea for the dinosaur extinction one was probably the longest I've researched on a single video, and I would guess the actual hard hours I put into that were probably about 100 hours. When do I think I'm finished? I never do. That's the point. You could edit forever and ever and ever, and tweak forever and ever and ever. And that is a good point, because whenever I put a video up, I do have this moment of self-doubt, or more than a moment of self-doubt. I'm very much waiting for the first comments to come in, not to stroke my ego, but to tell me that I haven't done a terrible job. I've been editing the video over and over again. I've been listening to my voice drone on and editing it down, and you do get to the point where you sort of become blind to your own production, and you just think, oh, have I added anything? Have I really given anything to anyone here? And again, this is back to these 3,000 subscribers now. All these people are going to take time out of their day to click on my video. Am I giving them something worth their time doing that? I hope that answers that question. If you could create a 5-man crime fighting team of superheroes made up of characters lifted from the Old Testament, who would they be? P.S. You can't pick God. That's a very good question. That's probably worth a video on its own. It's very difficult. I mean, there's a lot of anti-heroes in the Bible, aren't there? Jacob would have to be one. I mean, he naked man wrestled with God, so got to be up there, I suppose, somewhere. There's trying to think of else. Aquaman, Jonah, he's probably in there. I don't know. I'd be here for the next half hour trying to think about this one. I tell you who, Steve Shrives is probably the person to do that, because he's the action comic guy, as I've never read Marvel and what have you, so he'd probably come up with a better video out of that one. Good question though. I've just a very terrible answer. During its flight from A to B, does a photon pass through every point in the universe? Isn't that a massive question? All I'll say is keep watching 6 Impossible Things, and I'm getting my ideas on this across, I hope. I expect them to stimulate some conversation. What is your favourite poem? In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure-dome decree, where Alf, the sacred river, ran through caverns measureless to man down to a sunless sea. Yeah, that's me poetry. Congratulations, here is my question. King Kong 1933 or Campbell's soup? Thank you, Tom Piper. In your personal opinion, B2B, what gives different life forms value over others? Are there different taxonomy groups with living Homo sapiens? And so what if there were, or how about intelligent extraterrestrials? Right, okay, right, let me think. What gives different life forms value over others? I'm not certain what you mean there. I mean, why do we step on an ant, but we wouldn't smash a kitten's head in? We do seem to value certain life different than others. I can only assume it's more to do with empathy, in that we're empathic towards creatures that are more like us, that we can anthropomorphize. Are there different groups within Homo sapiens? I don't know. I think genetics has the answer to that. Did we all come out of Africa at the same time? Are the Aborigines in Australia? I mean, there were Pygmy. I don't know if there's still Pygmy Aborigines in Australia. Were they broken off from an earlier group than Western Europeans? So I don't know, but genetics I think will give us the answer to that in the next few years. If it hasn't already, I don't keep up to date on that. How many pumps would it take to pull cold water from depth to reduce hurricane strength? From what you have put out, your work should be awarded. Well, no it shouldn't, because it's not my work. I'm putting out other people's work and they should be recognised for it, which they are. You know, they get published in peer reviews and they get citations. They are the giants whose shoulders I stand on. I don't even stand on there. You know, I'm hardly worthy of brushing the dandruff off their shoulders. Not that I'm suggesting they have dandruff. But anyway, cold water from depth. Yeah, if you poured cold water from the depth of the ocean in the Atlantic and cooled down the surface, that might reduce hurricane strength. But in doing so, you're going to change the, the thermohaline circulation, because if you're pulling cold water out, then that's going to be replaced by warm water. And my understanding of the thermohalines is that the deep ocean currents, the cold currents, take, 1,000 years to circulate around the Earth. So if you start messing around with that, that is going to have implications on the climate. Would you not agree? So you'd be robbing Peter to pay Paul there, I think. How was B2B picked as your channel name? I was looking for a name that was easy to remember and that I couldn't Google. So I came out with I can't remember which, I came out with different ideas for names. And I had an interest in computers and an interest in radio, so Bored and Bits made sense there. Bored to Bits came to mind. I thought, oh, isn't that clever? You know, if you're bored to bits, do something. And I typed it into Google and I couldn't find it, so that was it. What football team do you support, and do we sports fans show a certain type of religious fervour when it comes to things like sport? No, I don't support a team, but yes, yes and no. I think religion plays on the same tribal instinct that sports fans have. The best example I can give of this is if you've supported Manchester City for 50 years, then what is it you're supporting? Because 50 years ago, Manchester City played in a different ground, and none of the people involved in the team 50 years ago are involved with the team now. So it's a completely different team. It's a name and perhaps a colour of a shirt. So it's an idea. I don't know. There's probably a whole psychology about it, but it is a sort of a tribal following. You know, you belong to a group. It's the us and them, and religion plays on that very strongly. Oh my goodness, Michelle, this is a long one. Is there a timeline showing the collapse of religious control over secular authority from the time when it ruled supreme to when the monotheistic armies were removed from the worldwide bigotry equation? I think the downward spiral of monotheism began in earnest when they could no longer field their religious armies, when they lost control of their overt stick. Right, I would guess, I've never looked at it in detail, but I think the answer is the printing press for Western religion. I think before the printing press, when Bibles were handwritten, all right, they were block printed, Tyndale and such like, the church would burn those Bibles. It would hunt them down and burn them because the church wanted control over the Word of God. In other words, they wanted to be the ones interpreting the Bible to their congregation. But Gutenberg and the press changed that because suddenly everybody could read. Bear in mind that, you know, most people could not read 150 years ago. Literacy was terrible. But the educated could. The educated got hold of the Bible and they could go through the Bible. People like Isaac Newton, who I think owned 30 Bibles in English, French, Latin, Hebrew, and he could speak or read all of those languages. And so he could look at the Bible and say, hang on, what the church is teaching about the Trinity is rubbish. So, you know, the received wisdom of the Bible could be questioned. And I think that began the downfall of the Bible. And then mass education, which started slightly earlier, I think, in the US than in the UK. But by about 1850, people, you know, children were starting to be educated, taught to read. And so that when you got to about 1900, you had mass education and massive accessibility to Bibles. You know, the Bible was what they learnt to read, so they had access to it. When you had the First World War followed by the pandemic, Spanish flu, people must have questioned God, and I think it's began to die then. Of course, we have Islam now, and Islam is probably in some ways where Christianity was around the time of Newton, around the time of the original settling of the Pilgrim Fathers in America. But I think mass education again will see an end to the organised religion of that, where religion is able to control the masses. What is your opinion on the way that religion is taught in schools? Biased, unbiased, or something else entirely? I'm not totally up to date on that. I don't know. I understand the homeschooling and the arguments in the States. In the UK, I think religion is taught more as a multicultural subject, whereby children are exposed to other religions. I mean, we have a state religion in the UK, but I think the exposure of children at a young age to the ideas of other religions it can only be a good thing, because it reduces the chance of xenophobia. If you're aware of these other cultures and aware of their festivals, then when you see them happening, you're not thinking, oh, it strips away the us and them, because you have a connection. At least the children do. So that can only be a positive thing. Do you think we advanced nations have turned a corner with science and technology, brackets internet, that will displace religion within 2 generations? Even the US shows a burgeoning non-religious class of the under 30s, according to recent polling. Well, yeah, I mean, that harks back to Michelle's question. To me, it's mass education. And I think religion, organised religion again, as opposed to personal belief, is dying of old age in the West. In England again, I don't know what the average age of church goers on a Sunday is, but I'm guessing it's probably climbing towards 70 or beyond. The younger generation are not going in any numbers. And the same thing will happen in the US, where you can be as fundamentalist as you want, but your children are going to suffer from cognitive dissonance. The point is that, as you say, after a couple of generations, the numbers will dwindle in the States, I'm sure. The problem is, I don't know whether we have 2 generations. The problems on the earth are so severe that, that's a different video though. Do I know the way to San Jose? Yes, and I've been there. What's your education level and major area of study? I don't have an education level. I was useless at school. School wasn't for me. I was intelligent, well, still am hopefully, but I didn't get on with that formal education, because I like to do what I like to do. I have thought about going back and doing formal studies, going to university, but I have nothing but admiration for people that go through that formal process of year after year to get to their PhD. I have the luxury that I can flit about and do whatever I want. Yes, I have nothing but admiration for them, but I think I prefer it my way. Can you reasonably envisage a time in the future when all religions will be looked upon as further examples of human mythology, ignorance and fear? Well, yes, I can, but I think it will take some time. I do not have a problem with personal beliefs as long as they don't interfere with other people's liberties. But the organised religion, yes, I think they will die. How long? I don't know. Scientology is quite a recent development. Is Scientology still growing, or is it on decline? I don't know. Maybe that would be a video. What's your favourite beer? Don't drink really. So if I went out, I don't know, it depends. A cold Guinness or maybe a lager. But I'm not really a drinker. I'm not teetotal. I've got nothing against it. I just don't really drink. What do I use for video editing? Okay. I use Photoshop for creating some of the images and for tidying images up and such like. And I use Audacity for my voice. I have a Samson microphone, which is about £60. I use Camtasia for most of my video editing, although I do use Videolan. I use that because Camtasia doesn't play with all formats. Thanks for the wonderful questions, and all I can say is thank you to you once again for watching.